have not are not as compelling.
Actually, the Miller side probably has more stories because the Millers were actually a more colorful bunch than the by nature than the Beaches were. But the Millers were in the Amish social strata and church strata. They were more diverse.
Hmm.
And so there came this point where certain branches of the family were forbidden by their church to have reunions, quote, reunions. Now, a homecoming, that was still kosher. But a homecoming is by definition an event that's where the family gets together at a home, generally at like the ancestral home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as the family grew and generations were added, there were too many people to meet at a home. And so, it kind of like naturally escalated into reunions, and reunions were forbidden. And so, we just, it just, the, the family get togethers just kind of died out.
Mm-hmm. I see. When's the last time that the Miller family met? Um, in the same capacity that the Beachies do. Do you have any memories of that?
I could not tell for sure when the last time was, though I recall an event here in Walnut Creek. It's where Henry Beachy lives. What we called it the Spakastani Haas. The right next to Walnut, just east of Walnut Creek Cheese, that red brick house.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that Henry Beachy.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that Henry Beachy. Okay, that Henry Beachy is my father's, your grandfather's first cousin.
Okay.
Okay, and so he was in the Louis Money, you know, family tree. We had a reunion there,
Okay.
and I remember sitting on a church bench out in the hayfield watching the big boys and the men play softball,
Hmm.
underhand, fast pitch softball,
Okay.
and that's the last one that I remember.
Hmm. That must have been a long time ago then.
It was I would have been less than 10 years old, so that
Hmm.
would have been more than 50 years ago.
Hmm. Okay, that helps me understand something then because I know grandma's brothers and sisters. I at least know their names. I've met some of them, and I have a much better grasp of who's who there. But no matter how hard I try, I really have almost no working memory of any of your dad's brothers or sisters. I don't know any of them as far as I know. I don't think I could pick any of them out if I even would run into any. And so that helps me understand why that is. Then there's never been any reunions in my lifetime. I probably haven't met any of them. Okay, I'm gonna change the subject a bit here. So this is gonna be a good stretching question here. So next, I'd like to move to the family's story or the family history prior to 1922. And don't get too hung up on the date there, 1922. That's pretty specific, but I think that would mean basically it'd be your grandparents, I believe, because Dottie was your dad was born in 1927, I think. Yeah, I'm
The
pretty
year
sure.
Babe Ruth hit
Yeah,
60 home
yeah.
runs.
That's
If
our
if that was 1927, then yes.
It was, yeah, because there's two things. It was Charles Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic, and Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs, and that's how I can remember when Dottie was born. So 1927. So basically, this question would be where were your parents born?
Both their birth certificates read Bars Mills, Ohio.
Bars Mills.
But at the time, Bars Mills was the biggest post office in the area, and so
What?
like rural delivery was Bars Mills, Ohio, and so their birth certificates are Bars Mills. They were born at home, but they would have been born um, in the Berlin Walnut Creek area, but the birth certificate reads Bars Mills.
Okay, I'll have to tackle you about that one some other time.
Took me for a loop too.
Bars
Uh,
Mills. I mean, because Bars Mills, there's nothing left of Bars Mills today. It's like a little collection of houses, if that. Do they even have a post office anymore at Bars Mills?
no, there's no post office left there.
Yeah.
But I'm speculating here, but I think it was because at the time there was the main north south traffic was from Canton to Dover, New Philly, and
Hmm.
it was by rail, and a rail ran through Bars Mills. So
Mm.
there would be like a passenger cars, and there would also be um, a mail car.
Hmm.
And so I suppose that's why it was Bars Mills.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That is well, that's interesting. Got to tackle that one some other time. Okay. So both of them were born at home. And do you happen to know where your dad's home place was? Like, do you know where the house was where he was actually born?
I think yes. I've always assumed this, so I think yes. It's on Weaver Ridge.
Hmm.
Um, would you know where the Ben Raber homestead
Yeah.
is? Okay, that was the original homestead. That's where that's where my grandpa and grandma lived with my grandma's parents.
Hmm.
And so it was a Gingrich homestead that was passed down. Like the along Weaver Ridge there were quite a number of Gingrich homesteads.
Hmm.
This was one of the Gingrich homesteads that my grandma and grandpa then bought.
Hmm.
And Dad would have been born there in that house.
Okay. Yeah. How about your mom? Do you know where the house was where she was born?
No, I the house where the eight cornered barn place, the uh, next door to Grandpa's. That's where she lived as a little girl, but
Hmm.
she was, I think, 2 or 3 years old when they moved there,
Hmm.
and so I do not know for sure where she was born.
Okay, I'm just going to make a stab here. I think I might know, but you can just tell me if this jogs your memory or not. I thought that she was actually born, or yeah, I thought that Cora and Jake moved from the like way down the Goose Valley.
You're right. Actually, it's the upper end of the
Yeah. Okay.
of Goose Bottom.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way at the upper end of Goose Bottom. If you would go from Berlin, take that road that runs directly east between Weaver
Hmm.
Ridge and State Route 39
Hmm.
and Chestnut Ridge.
Yeah.
Between those two, goes down into the valley.
Yeah.
It's at the upper end of that valley.
Yeah. Okay.
You're
Okay.
right. You're right.
Okay.
That
Good.
that that would be the house.
Yeah. Good. Okay. See, because
Good.
I often get that one and Grandpa's mixed up because they're somewhat close together. Sort of there in the valley. Grandpa's is sitting up on top of the valley, and there she's down in. Anyway, okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure about that. Okay, so that's where they lived, like around the 1920s, and then can you tell the story of how it is that that Grandma came to actually be raised in a different part of the county?
Grandma, uh, my mom, your grandmother's parents were taking care of a family or a husband and wife, and actually an aged couple
Hmm.
that did not have children. And so the house where they lived in, where she was born, that house was the homestead of this aged couple that was childless.
Hmm.
And so they contracted with Jacob and Cora, where they provided for Jacob and Cora a place to live and the use of the house and all of this in return for they would take care for them. And you may have seen that there's a document somewhere that I've seen. I couldn't just reference it exactly, but it like spelled out hay for the horse feed for the horse when they come home from church, or if they go anywhere, then Jacob and Korah were to hitch the horse and bring it into the house, so they could just from the house come out and get on the buggy.
Do you have any idea who has that document or where I could find it?
No, but I'll ask my brother David, your
Okay.
Uncle Dave.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Because that would be interesting. What you were just about to say something funny, I think.
No, it's just that these things were. It seems strange that all these things need to be spelled out.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, like you kind of assume these things maybe, but not in this family history. But
Oh.
there's no end of stories where indeed, if it wasn't spelled out that the horse had to be fed hay, it could get very scrawny, because these were
Really?
like what seems today like, well, yeah, sure, yeah, well, there's plenty of hay. We'll toss him some too. These were years when making a living was eking out a living, and
Huh.
so committing to also feed one more horse was a significant commitment.
Uh-huh. I see. That's interesting. So Cora and Jake were taking care of the old couple, and then did their contract include getting the house after the old couple had died?
I think yes,
Okay.
that was part of it. But it was this homestead was not like an ideal farming homestead,
Yeah.
not an ideal farm. It was kind of like in the valley, but there were no bottom fields. They
Hmm.
were all hillsides,
Yeah, I've
and
I've seen it. It's not ideal at all.
no, so it made more sense to move on down the valley.
Okay.
No, but there's kind of a unique twist to that little to that story.
Okay.
Um, there was a neighbor who was a distant relative of the childless couple, who had always assumed that he would be the heir. And so once he realized that it would not be him that who would inherit this property, he became kind of belligerent and not the friendliest neighbor. However, so when they eventually sold the house or the property and they moved to the farm that you now know as the Beachy farm
Hmm.
where Dave Burney lived,
Hmm.
the they moved with wagons, horses and wagons, and moved all their household belongings and so on. And the neighbor, of course, came to help because it would never do to not come help.
Okay.
But it was a rainy day, and he was given a tarp to cover the household goods, and he intentionally didn't use the tarp out of spite.
I mean, how immature. I mean,
That's just this little piece of family lore there.
yeah. I have a hard time wrapping my head around things like that because I mean, today, like, no one would put up with that. Like, who would do that? So kindish is the word, I think. Okay, so they moved on down to the home place now, the Beachy farm now,
Hmm.
down in the what is the name of that
Uh,
valley?
Pleasant Valley.
Pleasant Valley. Yeah. Okay. First,
Yeah, the creek is named Pleasant Run and you like at the Amish Mennonite Historical Center. Marcus Yoder showed me a map that had it actually named as Pleasant Run. It's not
okay.
nearly the name is not nearly known as well as the Goose Bottom
Hmm.
or the Goose
Or
Goose Creek there,
yeah,
but uh,
or
but
or or the
or
next
Mud,
one down, Mud.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
But but it is called Pleasant Run. It's Pleasant Valley.
Okay, that's good to know because I've actually sometimes when trying to describe this, I've sometimes just called it like a something like the north end of Mud Valley because it's kind of the valleys kind of connect together, and I thought, well, whatever, I guess it's just the Mud Valley. Okay, that's good to know. So it's actually the Pleasant
Well,
Valley.
actually, in the scheme of things, the Goose, Goose Creek
Hmm.
and Pleasant Run, they both like drain into that larger creek that then goes down to Dundee.
Hmm.
And so they in that lowland where those